Trump has just announced a new trade deal with the EU, which is more advantageous to America than the previous deal. Are you prepared to give Trump any credit today?
I will give him credit for humiliating the Europeans effectively. But in terms of delivering for the American people, I mean, remember what we were sold originally? 90 deals in 90 days? How did that work out? And now we're going to have tariffs put on, especially key pharmaceuticals coming out of Europe, not to mention European cars. So what you're likely to see is prices go up for your average working class American. So no, for the American people, I think that this is not even close to a win.
Krystal Ball joins Piers Morgan on his show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, to go up against MAGA cheerleader Clay Travis and Piers Morgan himself. He's not low in the way he asks these questions, but as she does, she handles it perfectly. Let's watch these clips and I'll give my thoughts on it afterwards.
I'm reducing the number of people coming in illegally on the southern border from 10 million in 4 years to, I think it was 6,000 last month. You give him credit for that?
He certainly has cracked down on the border, no doubt about it. But, you know, the cruelty of this immigration system, we're learning more and more about the men who were sent to CCOT with no due process, who were raped and tortured and abused. We're learning more about the conditions in Alligator Alcatraz. I mean, it's a horror show, which is exactly why the American people are revolting against all of his immigration policies across the board, even though that had previously been a strength for him.
All right, Clay Travis, one of the problems, it seems to me, for the Democrats is their unwillingness to give Trump credit when he gets things right. The Trump dementia or derangement syndrome, as people call it, it is a real thing, isn't it? Because I think they would get so much better in terms of a relationship with Trump, with themselves, if they were just able to give him credit where he deserves it.
Well, first, the last time I was on with you, Piers, I think I said that I would dress as a full clown if the stock market in 18 months had not rebounded to where it was on election day. We are, as I speak to you right now, at an all-time high. I think you're right. And by the way, I don't know if anybody else on that show who disagreed with me is willing to put on the clown nose, but maybe they should. I hope they at least didn't sell their stocks, despite the fact they were telling everybody else to do it. But yeah, look, Trump ran primarily, Piers, on three things. He ran on the economy, he ran on border, he ran on crime. On the economy, we're at record highs in the stock market. Inflation is basically beaten down to about 2.5%. On the border, as you just mentioned, there are no illegals coming in at all. We are deporting violent illegal criminals at record rates. And on crime, it's not getting a ton of attention, but we are on pace in the United States potentially for the lowest murder rate, lowest violent crime rate in the 21st century, if these numbers can hold for the remainder of this calendar year. I don't see how you could look at those three things and not say, hey, first 6 months of Trump, it's not a disaster. We've also started to lessen the amount of war. There are less people dying. He managed to destabilize the Iranian government and take back their chances of getting nuclear weapons without a single loss of life. I can't think, Piers, in my life, I'm 46, of a better 6 months presidency than what we've seen from Trump so far.
Where would you criticize him, Clay?
If I were going to criticize him, it would probably be that I think on the Epstein case, I think that they totally overpromised and underdelivered. And I think it has knocked them off their stride. I think Pam Bondi with phase one on the binders, whoever okayed that, it was a colossal misstep that has created a mess of their own creation that was unnecessary. And that they could have addressed in a more succinct, honest way with the public. But if you take that off the calendar, I think you can say, look, the Senate has not moved as aggressively as they should have to confirm his judges. They're not moving at a very good pace there. I think you can address issues on that front. But I think in general, if I were giving him a letter grade, I'd give him an A, maybe not an A plus. But an A. And again, I think it's the best first 6 months of any president in my life.
And that right there is the problem when you're a cheerleader for a specific politician. You're never going to actually think outside of the propaganda. You're always on propaganda mode. You're always team us. And it's not about the Republicans, is just this one man. So debating or interviewing somebody like Clay Travis to question or critique what he's about to call daddy, he literally calls that man daddy. Why would he give any answer besides, oh my goodness, this is the greatest president I've ever seen, even though he's rounding people up? And he talked about the economy, but the tariffs are so bad and stupid that even Arizona iced teas are considering raising their prices above 99 cents, which has never happened. Even when other companies have and used every excuse to go past $1, they didn't, because they didn't have to. And now they're considering going past $1 because they have to. Now, you may not even drink Arizona's or like it or ever heard of it. Who cares? The fact is, there was an American company who could keep their prices low while making a profit. And Trump is ruining that. If that's happening with this company, what do you think is going to happen with all the rest of the companies? The coffee companies, even stores like Walmart are closing down. And not only are companies going out of business, you have places like Las Vegas being a whole ghost town. That's what happens when you threaten everybody, you make everything more expensive, and you don't allow for higher wages. And there's no protections for anybody. It's just a recipe for disaster.
Well, Krystal, what grade would you give Donald Trump?
So let me just clear up for your audience. I am not some liberal Democratic sycophant who capes for the Democratic Party and can never give Trump credit. In fact, in his first term, I actually supported the tariffs that he put in place because I thought they made some sort of sense. This term, there is virtually nothing, maybe changing like the pressure on the shower heads, that executive order, that I can get behind. And I'll tell you why, Piers. First of all, his major quote unquote accomplishment at this point is the big, beautiful bill, which will strip healthcare away from millions of people in order to fund a tax cut for the people who need it the least. Second of all, the level of fascistic cruelty with regard to the immigrant population here is more horrifying than I ever could have even anticipated. Deploying the military in American streets, rounding up people at Home Depot, sending them off with no due process to a slave labor camp. Are you kidding me? The idea that this is a peace president. Hey, I thought he was going to solve the Ukraine-Russia crisis in a day before he even got into office. That's still ongoing. No changes there. We have backed and funded an absolute campaign of starvation and horror in Gaza, and we started a new war with Iran. So on every single level, this presidency has been a chaotic horror show and a disaster. And the people who will be hurt the most in this country are the very working class people that Trump claimed and lied to support. So I give him an F across the board. And again, I am not some Trump deranged. I've given him credit in the past. I said it was good when he went and talked to the leader of North Korea. I said it was good when he met with the Taliban to try to negotiate a deal. But he never actually had the stones to pull out of Afghanistan. But in any case, he's a disaster this time. I could not in my wildest dreams have imagined how terrible this administration would be and how quickly here only 6 months in.
Do you know, out of interest, Krystal, how many people Barack Obama deported in 8 years?
I know he deported a lot, Piers. But here, do you realize this, though? Clay said something earlier. He said, oh, we're deporting record-breaking numbers of violent criminals. Look, I'm fine with deporting violent criminals. The reality is that's not what's happening. Actually, the proportion of violent criminals that we are deporting is far less. Why? Because ICE agents have been told, stop chasing after the gang members. Stop going after the criminals, because that takes time. That takes energy. Instead, Stephen Miller says, go to the Home Depot, go to the 7-Eleven, round up the mom, round up the grandma, round up the person who is going through the asylum process and actually doing the proper things and hasn't done anything wrong, and ship them off to CCOT. It's disgusting. And that's why there's truly a revolt against it from the American public. I mean, the backlash
right, but that wasn't
against
actually
Trump's
my
immigration
question.
policies is striking.
That's Piers Morgan's favorite little trick. But do you know how many people Obama deported? It was wrong when he did it too. Piers would never accept the fact that people think that the policy is wrong no matter what the president is. He thinks everybody is just like Clay Travis. They're sycophants to their favorite president. That's not how it works. Even if you support somebody, you could disagree with what they're doing. And as Krystal's about to point out, the way that's going about it is the difference, is the main difference. It's not just a number. It's the fact that they're not going after any violent criminals. None. You know why? Because if you go into neighborhoods where they do have guns and organization, it's not just as easy as rounding up old ladies and people who are actively making themselves known and going to court dates. Those are easy because you know they're disarmed. You know they're trying to do the right thing. And you're actively trying to be violent with those people on purpose. Because as Clay is going to bring up, the cruelty is the goal. That is the point. It's not like they didn't mean to be cruel. They're trying to be publicly cruel as much as possible as a deterrence. There's a word for that.
And at some point, American generosity was being taken advantage of, and actual American citizens don't have the resources that they need. So sometimes daddy has to take control, and you have to sometimes be mean.
Pause. You a grown-ass man and a multimillionaire. You do not have to be calling nobody that's not your biological father daddy. Especially a politician. Politicians aren't gods or heroes. They're just politicians. That man is not your daddy. He don't even like his kids. So why would he even include you to that list? What are you doing?
And I think that's the way that the Trump immigration policy has to go, because the phone calls have to shift from, hey, you can stay in a 4-star Manhattan hotel and get taken care of on American taxpayer dime, to, hey, they're looking for people who are here illegally, don't come, and maybe even consider going back. And historically, the way that immigration worked in this country when illegals came in was they came in seasonally and then they walked back, basically traveled back to Mexico and still had lives there. What's happened is people have stopped going back to their countries of origin at all. And we can't be. I would ask to Krystal or anybody else, okay, you think it's being too mean. What's the number of illegal immigrants in this country that would be too many for you? For Krystal, for anybody else out there? For me, 20 million is too many. For a lot of Democrats, I think 100 million wouldn't be enough. So where do you draw the line? If you're breaking the law, sooner or later, there have to be consequences.
So can I just,
well,
I
that is a good question. And Krystal,
about that.
Yeah, Krystal, answer that.
I want to address a couple things about that. So first of all, I'm probably more permissive of immigration than your average Democratic Party member. You know, I know there's this idea that Democrats are open borders. That's obviously preposterous. But I believe, and I think this is borne out by the data, that immigrants overall are good for the country. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't a limit to the number of people that you can reasonably absorb. Exactly what that number is, you'd have to get an expert to study and to be able to say. But there's something honest about what Clay is saying here, which is basically like the cruelty is the point. We need to make an example of people. It needs to be a horror show. That's exactly why you have these grotesque ASMR videos of deportations, all this like fascist theater of marching everybody through the park, the intentional cruelty at Alligator Alcatraz, the shipping of people to CCOT, where again, we now know that there were reports of rape and torture and abuse. Yeah, that is all an intentional part of the policy. So I appreciate the honesty about that. The dishonest part is there's always this rhetoric about, oh, well, we've got to take care of our people first. Oh, we've got to make sure that American citizens are taken care of. Bullshit. This president just took healthcare away from 17 million people. He's cutting food assistance to millions of people. And you expect me to believe he cares about your average American citizen? This trade deal that you guys are so hot on is going to jack up the prices on pharmaceuticals, on medicine for your average American people. So, you know, where is the care and concern for the American citizen here? It's all just about scapegoating an immigrant population and saying they're the reason for your pain and your problems, when in reality, it's the very oligarchic class that Trump himself represents and serves and protects with all of its actions, including the protection of the Epstein files, by the way.
Thank you. At least Krystal is very clear-headed and very direct with her points. If cruelty is the point, that does not make you the good guy. And then you say, we have to protect the people at home, but all his bills, everything he passes is to ruin people's lives, all to the benefit of the richest people in the world. You don't care about the people. Just like how you say cruelty is the point, just say, we don't care about nobody who's not a millionaire. Just be honest. We've reached that point. You might as well just completely come out with it, because lying about it is so frustrating and makes you look more ridiculous than you already are. If he wanted to help homeless people, he would just do that. But instead, he wants to call in the National Guard into DC because there's homeless people in the street. You want to round them up and put them where exactly? Our concentration camps? You want to send them overseas? If you don't think that that's you next, you're so wrong. Most people are not that far away from being homeless. Most people. How is that anything positive? How is that any form of success? Fuck a stock market. There's millions of homeless people, and there's even more millions of people that are at the precipice of it, right on that line. But when you think cruelty is the point, you will support anything. And terms to describe that is evil and fascist. I try not to throw the word evil around because I try to be just a moderator of these debates, but If you think cruelty is the point is a good thing, and that's why you support a politician, then there's no way you're a good person. And a lot of that has to do with money and politics. Lobbyists are not good people or your friends. Click this video to see Mehdi Hassan whoop on a lobbyist. Peace.